affecting the population. A drought is drought, you know, it's a disaster for whatever it is. And in terms of early warning system, how early is early, you know, is the critical issue. If you get warning in September that in October there's not going to be rains, is that early enough, you know, in terms of what we're going to do? It is very critical as a country that we invest in our, you know, the technology there is, because we are not reinventing the wheel. Other countries have been able to do this predictably in quite a bit of time for people and counties, subnational, national government to be able to respond. And this area, I believe the meteorological department needs to be supported to be able to get the equipment necessary and the know-how necessary for that predictability to take shape early enough. And that is an area that we are still lagging behind in terms of early warning system, in terms of what we need to do as collectively. And lastly, you know, the efforts we do as a country, you know, is not enough in terms of climate change mitigation. The global nature of climate change mitigation is very critical. What happens in Kenya must be replicated in all the countries in the world for us to be able to see meaningful impact in terms of mitigating against the climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor. Ambassador Kala, last word.
Actually, I should really say that all the questions were answered. I just wanted to add maybe 1 or 2 points. And the first one is related to women. Walid indicated that everything that is done, really the lens of young people are really brought into attention. And I will really ask, I will also add that women. Women are really in the center of our action as FAO, our programs, our projects. They make sure that we really involve, we focus, we consult, and they lead. They can really transform, and that's really clear. And actually, maybe to indicate that we have a report that was published that say that if a women were given the same services and the same inputs as men, productivity and production will increase in almost 25%, and you can really acknowledge that this will contribute to ensure food security and nutrition. And I couldn't agree more with the governor and say that we really welcome and we congratulate. Those are really the successful stories, the best practice that we should really emulate and really upscale, because they are really transformative. And I also want to bring the Food System Summit that brought those issues, looking really at the agro-food systems from farm to fork, looking at really production and productivity, but also, of course, look at the transportation, packaging, processing, giving really the whole value chain, which opened the opportunities really to create decent jobs for women again and young people. And Kenya has been really showing, of course, leadership on that. So those are my addition, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank
Victor,
you,
Victor?
thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, I know mine, there wasn't much touched on my area, but just as Excellency the government has said about the early warning system, yes, as I said, you need to have sound scientific and technical knowledge in order to give that focus. But what we are working on now is on experimental at the moment. We are going to see if we can give a 3 months early warning, if it works out. And perhaps I can give an example, just a small point, an example of how, when I talked of multi-sectoral early warning system. For example, now we are experiencing drought. But the earlier drought we used to experience, and there was power rationing. There is no power rationing that is occurring now. This is because of the co-production of the multi-sector that we are having with KenGen, whereby when we give our focus, we sit with them and they at least take the action. There's also the issue of the Nzoia Basin, whereby we use, there's a lady who was talking about Serikali's idea, Nowadays, you don't hear about it. It's not that the floods are not there, but the early warning system is what is assisting in everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you can see, there's a lot to be shared, but in the interest of time, we'll encourage you to interact with the panelists outside as you take your tea and during the break. Otherwise, this discussion can go on, and therefore, I'll also not attempt to summarize what I've said, but encourage you to discuss. So join me in giving a clappy hand to the panelists as they walk down. Thank you very much, panelists, and thank you very much. I have a special announcement from FLOCA that the following counties are requested to have a consultative meeting with the FLOCA team. That's today, behind the Senators' holding area, anytime between now and 5 p.m. And the counties are as follows: Taita Taveta, Bungoma, Nyamira, Baringo, Mombasa, Nairobi, Kwale, Lamu, Kirinyaga, Murang'a, Samburu, Uasin Gishu, Nandi, Laikipia, and Homa Bay. Anytime between now and 5 p.m. at their tent over there. Thank you very much. And I hand over to the overall moderator and rapporteur for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Victor, for that excellent facilitation of the session that we have just concluded. And also, of course, to our distinguished set of panelists who have done an incredible job in leading us through the sub-theme discussions. Just to mention that we are now set for the next theme, but also just to remind you that the climax of today's events will have an address from the Honorable, the Chief Justice. Chief Justice Martha Koome is already in town and will be joining us at noon, and we look forward to welcoming the Honorable Chief Justice in joining us today. So I would now like us to proceed to the next session, and I see we started early, but we've been joined by the chair, the vice chair of the Council of Governors, Excellency Governors who are here, and the senators, and the rest of the distinguished delegates here with us. Please feel most welcome as we continue with the second day of this conference. So without much ado, I'd like to welcome the moderator for the next session. Our next session is on financing climate action at the subnational level. Thank you very much. The Excellency Governor, the Vice Chair of the Council of Governors, just reminded me that the Minister for Local Government from Zimbabwe will also be joining us at that session. So I think this will be very, very interesting for us. So we are looking forward to that session. So I would like now to invite the next moderator, Mr. Jotham Mutoka. Please, if you're here, kindly approach and welcome the panelists who are coming on to the next session. Karibu.
Yeah, thank you, the main coordinator, for the session for today. Your Excellencies, the governors in the session today, the invited guests who are with us today, and honorable members of parliament, I would like to welcome you to this second session on financing for climate action at sub-national level. First, I would like to thank the previous moderator for trying to save time. The session that we have is going to take roughly 1 hour and 20 minutes. We had been allocated 1 hour and 30 minutes, but we'll try to fit in. As we have been notified, there is a speech from the Chief Justice after this session. Allow me invite the panelists for this session. And before I do that, I would like to refer you to the section of the timetable. There are a few changes which would be good for you to note in terms of the panelists who will participate in the next session. According to what you have in your program, the first panelist was to be Governor Nderitu Muriithi, the governor for Laikipia. We've had a change on that, and instead we will have the PS Devolution, Julius Korir. That's the first change. The next change that we have, we were to have Senator Charles Kibiro, the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget. For this second slot is being replaced by Mohamed Faki, who is the senator for Mombasa. And the third change on the program is the slot number 3. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm just reminded that I should have introduced myself. I know the moderator had done the introduction, so I thought I wouldn't do that, but thanks for that. My name is Jotham Mutoka. I'm the Deputy CEO at SBM Bank. SBM stands for State Bank of Mauritius. It's a commercial bank owned by the government of Mauritius, but very actively involved in development projects in Kenya and also financing of commercial projects in Kenya. Thank you very much. So I'll proceed from there. The third change that we are doing on this is for the item number 3, where we were to have Dr. Julius Moya, who is the Principal Secretary, National Treasury. Instead, he is being represented by Professor Barako Dulacha, who is the Director of Financial and Sectoral Affairs at the National Treasury. So those are the 3 changes that we will have for the panelists for today. The other 2 remain as what you have in your program. So at this moment, allow me to welcome the panelists onto the podium, and I would like you to give them a round of applause as they come to the podium. The first one is PS Devolution, Julius Korir. Welcome to the podium. And secondly, I would like to invite Senator Mohamed Faki, Senator for Mombasa County. And third, I would like to invite Professor Baraka Dulacha from the sectorial at the affairs at the National Treasury. Let's clap for him. Number 4 onto the stage, I would like to invite the Deputy President, Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, that's AGRA, Dr. Fadel Ndiame. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Do we have Fadel Ndiame in the... As we wait for him, we will continue. And fifth, I would like to invite UNCDF Global Advisor on local transformative finance. And this is Dimitri Pozidaev. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. Thank you. May we clap for him as he comes onto the stage. Members of the plenary session, as the panelists come onto the stage, I would like us to just do a recap of the discussions that we've had in the previous panel. As you had various presenters make their presentation, especially on the disaster preparedness and the initiatives that need to be done around that. One of the key trends within all the presentations that have been done is the aspect of financing of the climate action. I'll remind you from the COP26, we all heard about the initiatives that the world is looking at in terms of financing climate action and also mediation of the impact of disasters out of the climate action. Today, as a country, as you may remember from the discussions of yesterday, the President directed on the collection of 6.2 trillion shillings for the climate action activities. I know this is a lot of funding that is required, and as it has been presented before, each of the initiatives that you've had from the previous collaboration and the previous discussions require funding. The team that you have before you today is to review the actions that are happening at the sub-national level in light of climate action. And on this, I would like to put a few things in terms of housekeeping. I know we've been given 1 hour and 20 minutes to be able to do what we have to do. We will use the first 1 hour, where we'll allocate 10 minutes to each of the panelists today to speak about a few pertinent questions that we will ask and pose to them, so that out of their responses we can pick up the discourse. And if you have any questions that you would like to pose to the panelists, we will spare 20 minutes towards the end of the session for that. So please write down all your questions so that at the opportune time, then we can give you an opportunity to ask the questions. So I will start by going directly to the PS, Devolution. And this is in regard to what is happening at the county levels in terms of the preparedness for financing of climate action. And my question to PS Korir is this. The first one would be, counties have been allowed by law to establish specific funds. A number of counties, as we have seen from legislation that have been done, have established county climate change funds. The question we have as a panel today is, have these counties operationalized these funds, and what has been the impact on the ground? Thank you. Let's start with that.
Thank you, Bona Moderator. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I want to recognize all the protocols here, recognize the governors who are here with us, the delegates, the members from the diplomatic corps, and all other protocols. So again, I'll say good morning. I am honored to be here before you this morning on this great subject on financing locally led climate action programs. I think you've been told that after the COP26 the other week, I believe in the world, are the first country to hold this. And the purpose was to see how we as a country are going to now put into practice the commitments that were made and also the commitments that we have made as a country. I just want to quote one actor, Schwarzenegger, who said that combating climate change requires collaboration with many levels of government. And I think this is a true situation in Kenya, that our constitution recognizes the 2 levels of government, the 47 county governments, as well as the national government. And the sum total of activities of these 2 levels of governments will contribute to our entire climate action program, which will make Kenya a country that is doing well in this area. As you've been told, this program of financing locally led climate action program is a pioneer program of it in itself, in that it is recognizing the devolved nature of our country, of our governments, and recognizing the very important role that the county governments play. And so to be able to do that, instruments had to be put in place so that the governments, the county governments are in better position to be able to roll out this program. So the idea is to decentralize and devolve climate finance in scale, and also ensure that there is a predictable way to deliver local-led climate adaptation and resilience actions, as well as also to strengthen the subnational and national governments institutions to predict, plan, budget, implement, and monitor and report on local climate action. The program is nationwide, as I think you've been told, and is designed to support our ambitious program on climate agenda. I want to say in terms of how county governments are ready. As Ministry of Devolution, our main mandate is to support the county governments in delivering the services that were devolved. One of them is the climate action. And so, together with the Treasury and Ministry of Environment, we designed this program, FLOCA, so that the county governments can do that. Through our Kenya Devolution Support Program, one of the components was capacity building and building the capacity of counties, first of all, to put legislative in place. And I think I would like to report that as we are talking, about 35 county governments have put in place county climate change laws, which are operational. So that is thanks to what we did through the Kenya Devolution Support Program, where we did an assessment of counties, looked at the policies, and worked with the county governments to also domesticate the national climate change policy. So those are the two things that we've done as a national government. We also are very glad that through this, working together with the county governments, they have included climate action in CIDPs. So that is to ensure that their plans, the medium-term and long-term plans, are aligned to ensure that climate action is incorporated. Of all the county government also have now a designated county executive committee member responsible for climate change in their counties. 24 of our counties have developed climate change policies, and I think a good number of them are in the final stages of finalizing that. We have also climate action plans from 23 counties that are ready and being implemented, and 29 counties have established climate change funds. Now, you will see that after the act, they did the climate action acts in their counties. This provided the way to now set up the climate change funds, so that they are able now to start pulling in resources and putting there for climate action. And I think 7 of the counties have devolved, have now put the money, and the 7 counties have of the 29 that have the county climate change funds, 7 of them have developed now the climate change fund regulations to support the local financing climate action. Makueni, I'm glad to report, is one of the counties that have set up all this climate change policy, operationalized the act, and also now ready to roll. What I would want to say is that FLOCA will be easily implemented by counties that have put in place all these activities, because FLOCA is looking at how to champion climate adaptation programs that have the local input and have buy-in from the county administration. So as the Ministry of Devolution, we want to urge every other county, those who have not passed the laws, please quickly do so. Those who have not finalized the policy, please do so, so that with the act now, you'll be able to set up the county climate fund, climate change fund, so that now when FLOCA comes in, you'll be ready to use it. I know there will be an initial capital of about 15 million, which will be clarified by Treasury, which will help county governments to now finalize the action plan, so that now, based on those action plans, they'll develop projects which will now attract funding, which will support their climate change action. So, Bwana Moderator, I just want to stop at that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, PS Korir, for that. It's impressive that 35 out of the 47 counties have legislation in terms of climate action. And it's also impressive, as you have informed the session, that 23 out of the counties have climate action plans. And again, as we have been informed, that 29 out of the 47 have funds established for climate action. And in terms of setting the regulations, we have 7 counties that have. This is quite some good progress, and I think from the plenary we should clap for the counties on this. My next question still to the PS Korir is in light of the funding that is coming from the central government and also from other donors into the kitty for the climate action, are counties involved in looking at other innovative ways of raising funds from their own sources to support the climate action? We know the issue of funding has been a thorny issue, and would like to hear whether there is action at the county level to support this initiative. Back to you.
Thank you so much. I think what the national government, and as I said, is to build the capacity to support the county governments to be able to discharge some of these functions. And to be able to do that, they will also require to now diversify sources of financing to be able to discharge fully those functions. And FLOCA has been designed in a way that part of the support that they will receive, apart from implementing climate change action plans, the activities, the money will also help them develop projects that they can approach development partners, they can approach international organizations so as to supplement the little resources that they have to be able to implement the climate action. So we will work very closely. I think having attended the COP26, we realized that there's so much money out there that can be tapped into so that we can fast track our ability to comply or to fulfill the commitments that we've made as a country. So FLOCA will help in building that. Apart from implementing the climate change action activities within the counties, we will use the part of that resource also to develop bankable projects, especially targeting carbon credits, so that we can attract that funding. We'll also look at how counties can reap or earn out of some, let's say, providing carbon sinks, which are very critical in alternative revenue sources. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that response. As we have heard, indeed, the counties will have to look for innovative sources in supporting the funding for action in climate change. Our next presenter, who is Senator Faki, will give us a bit of the highlights of what is happening in Senate in regard to supporting the counties and their action plans for the climate action. And my question to Senator Faki, the senator from Mombasa, is this. What is the Senate doing to ensure that counties are well-resourced to deal with the impacts of climate change while still maintaining efficiency delivery in services? Back to you, Senator.
Thank you, Honourable Moderator. The Chair, Council of Governors, our host governor, all governors present, our Deputy Speaker, Professor Kamar, all protocols observed. Good morning. Mine is to stand in for Senator Kibiru, the Chair of the Finance Committee of the House, of the Senate. And I'll do as much as possible to be able to answer the issues that have been raised. But first of all is that Kenya has borne the brunt of climate change, especially in relation to drought, landslides, and flooding. Its negative impacts have been highlighted at various forums. And even yesterday, His Excellency the President highlighted some of the issues that are with us in terms of the climate change. Responding to climate change involves a two-pronged approach. First one is mitigation, which entails reducing emissions of and stabilizing levels of heat-trapping greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, either by reducing sources of these gases, for example, burning of fossil fuels for electricity, heat, and transport, or enhancing the sinks that accumulate and store these gases, such as oceans, forests, and soils. The goal of mitigation is to avoid significant human interference with the climate system and stabilize the greenhouse gas levels in a time frame sufficient to allow ecosystems to adapt naturally to climate change, ensure that food production is not threatened, and to enable economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner. B, adaptation, which entails adjusting to actual or expected future climate. The goal is to reduce vulnerability of the population to the harmful effects of climate change, like sea level encroachment, more intense extreme weather events, or food insecurity. It also encompasses making the most of any potential beneficial opportunities associated with climate change. For example, longer growing seasons and increased yields in some regions. Number 3, adaptation and mitigation to climate change have cost implications which are borne by both national and county governments. The role of the Senate in ensuring county governments are well resourced to address climate change while still maintaining efficient service delivery. Although climate change is a global issue, its impact is felt at the local level. Thus, counties are the first responders to any emergencies. County governments are therefore play a critical role in promoting adaptation and mitigation activities. However, counties do not have sufficient capacity to implement the necessary programs due to inadequate financial resources and against other competing functions as stipulated in Schedule 4 of the Constitution. There is a wide consensus that climate-related issues should be considered as part of budget scrutiny. Aligning resources to climate change, mitigation, and adaptation actions should be a priority. The role of the Senate is thus to consider policies on financing climate change actions to ensure sustainable means to support mitigation and adaptation actions by county governments to address climate change. Article 96(3) of the Constitution provides that the Senate determines the allocation of national revenue among counties. The third generation formula for allocation of revenue among county governments, which was passed by the Senate in 2020, places emphasis towards functions that are devolved as follows: population 18%, health 17%, agriculture 10%, urban 5%, poverty 14%, land mass 8%, roads 8%, and the basics share at 20%. These functions are critical in adaptation and mitigation programs. The allocation criteria therefore accords county governments an opportunity to integrate climate change, adaptation, and mitigation actions into the broader sector programs in their budgets. Some of the programs include sensitization of climate-smart agricultural practices to enhance food security, support tree planting programs, promote sustainable urban development, proper waste disposal, and improve public health management systems to control the spread of infectious diseases, among other initiatives. The Climate Change Act number 11 of 2016 provides a framework for climate action by both national and county governments, establishing climate change fund for funding climate actions and interventions. The Act provides the fund shall be utilized for, and among other functions, to provide technical support to county governments. The Senate also ensures that county governments get their fair allocation of grants and international climate funds extended to the county by bilateral and multilateral organizations towards climate change adaptation and mitigation. For instance, developed countries committed to jointly provide US $100 billion annually by 2020 to developing countries for mitigation and adaptation. This was a major issue of discussion at this year's climate conference in Scotland, COP26, where the developed countries were reminded to fulfill the $100 billion US per year funding pledge for climate change adaptation programs in developing countries. For these funds to be effective in addressing climate change, it is essential that they reach the developed units either as additional equitable share or conditional grants so that counties are able to implement their climate actions. The County Government's Grants Bill 2021 was passed by the Senate and forwarded to the National Assembly this year. The bill provides a framework for disbursement of conditional grants to county governments in compliance with orders of the High Court in High Court Petition number 252 of 2016. The public-private partnerships is an important avenue also for incentivizing climate actions, for example, through investments in transport and environment. The Senate considered and passed the Public-Private Partnership Bill 2021 with amendments and reverted it to the National Assembly. Once assented to, the legislation will establish a legal framework for county governments to enter into public-private partnerships, agreements with parties to undertake public partnership projects without seeking approval from the national government. It also bestows on county governments the responsibility for administration of the overall project development cycle. PPPs will enable countries to undertake investments that promote mitigation and adaptation to climate change. Finally, through its role in oversight, the Senate ensures that county governments meet their obligations towards the targets in the legislation and commitments under various agreements on climate change adaptation and mitigation ratified by Kenya, including in relation to climate finance. The reports should therefore be submitted to the Senate for consideration so that we can undertake our oversight role effectively. However, there are some challenges that have occurred, and I think in the recent past, we have seen the Council of Governors going to court to stop the Senate in its oversight role, especially in terms of the road maintenance levies disbursed to the counties as conditional grants. As you are aware, the matter is still before the court, and we may not speak much about it. But as a Senate, we are also, to some extent, handicapped in terms of oversight. As you are aware, we are only allowed to oversight the equitable revenue that is disbursed by the national governments. We are out of reach on the on-source funds or on-source revenue that is collected locally by the county governments. And also now, according to the to the recent judgment or recent ruling of the court, the conditional grants that are given by the national government or bilateral donors to the county governments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Faki, for giving us a highlight of what the Senate is doing to support the counties in these particular aspects. And just to recap that you mentioned, there's technical support that the Senate gives to the counties over this. And beyond that, the allocation of grants for climate change action to the counties for support in terms of taking their own initiatives on this. Beyond that, of encouragement of the counties to participate in private partnership and encourage investments that will help the actions towards climate change. And above that, for the Senate to give an oversight on how these funds are being used and also the activities in the counties. Thank you very much for that. My next question goes to the next member of the panel, and this is Professor Barako Dolacho. Considering that Africa contributes the least to carbon emissions but bears the highest brand in terms of the burden of the climate change, we have seen this in Kenya and also from the previous discussions that we've seen for the previous panel that has been here. Is Kenya a recipient of a Green Climate Fund, and what is the status of the domestic uptake for that fund and the impact that we have seen on the ground? To you, Professor Barako.
Thank you very much for the question. Honorable Governors, Your Excellencies, and all dignitaries around, good morning. I represent National Treasury, and to answer the question, I first want to give a brief background to the context of where we are. Climate change issue is a significant threat to our economic growth and development and sustainability of our trajectory. That's something that we need to know at the back of our mind, that this is a serious matter that we need to address now and in the immediate future. You are right that we contribute very little to the climate issues. For example, in our case as a country, we contribute less than 0.03% of the green gas emission, And so, but we bear the significant brunt as Kenya and even developing countries in Africa. And in terms of fiscal liability of climate issues, it's quite significant in that the issue of floods, for example, could cause GDP reduction of 5% over a 7-year period. If you look at the issue of drought, it has significant in terms of GDP, growth reduction, significant effect in terms of GDP to the tune of 8% over 5 years. So this means that this is a serious matter that we need to address, and for our own survival and even our own economic prosperity. That said, I think the National Treasury has done adequately in terms of resource mobilization to address these issues. Yes, we do assess the global funds available, the Green Climate Fund in particular. Kenya has had the opportunity to assess this fund, and as you know, the National Treasury is the National Designated Authority, NDA, for this fund, and it has an important role to play. The PS National Treasury is the focal point for this. And as NDA, Treasury plays a role in terms of providing leadership in this area, facilitating the institutions that are seeking accreditation, and also facilitating those who are accessing these resources globally through the National Treasury in terms of proposals submitted, and we kind of issue the no objection letters. The no objection procedure comes from the National Treasury. So all these proposals come through the National Treasury, and as a Treasury, we support our institutions, and whether private or public, that seek to assess the Green Climate Fund. And I think that's something we need to know. And in this regard, the National Treasury, through its own effort, has accredited some of our institutions like National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, the Kenya Commercial Bank, Acumen Fund. These institutions are accredited nationally in terms of access to global fund, the Green Climate Fund. There are other institutions which are accreditation are in process, like Kirdi, Cooperative Bank, and others. And National Treasury, as the focal point in enabling institutions to access this fund, plays its role as NDA in terms of providing that support and facilitating institutions to access these funds. Then I think I want to add in terms of access, what's going on now. We have 14 projects going on across the country, which is linked to Green Climate Fund to the tune of about 23.8 billion across our country. In addition, we have 20 projects. 20 project is an acronym for Towards Ending Drought Emergencies. This is funding of about 3.8 billion that is targeted to 11 ASAL counties, ASAL counties in terms of ending drought emergencies. And this matter that we are going to implement through the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. And I think these funds are available now through IUCN. It's just for the military to access. We have put in place necessary procedures in terms of account opening at Central Bank and possibly at a commercial bank for these ASAL counties to access these funds. And in terms of other counties, for example, recently, NEMA, through this initiative, assessed 1 billion Kenya shilling for Athi River basement ecosystem and the communities within this Athi River basin, like in Kiambu, Machakos, and two other counties, Nyandarua. And so it will be very important for the communities to be resilient in terms of the floods and what appertains to the catchment area that deals with Athi River, that concerns Athi River. As to other funds available, yes, Kenya has been accessing funds as national treasury to mobilize funds in terms of addressing climate change issue. We have other funds like Global Environmental Facility. Kenya has had the opportunity to access these funds in terms of addressing climate issue to the tune of about 14 billion. And this fund was set up in 1992. But over the years, we have been able to access these funds in terms of addressing climate issues. And I think we'll still continue doing that. There are also adaptation funds, which Kenya is able to access these funds to the tune of 1 billion and had projects in 14 counties in terms of adaptation fund. There's also a climate investment fund, which is also a global fund, which is more or less incentivizing investment in climate action. And in this area, we have 2 projects, Scaling Up Renewable Energy and Clean Technology Fund. Kenya has had opportunity to assess approximately 9 billion shillings in this area, and also co-financing of about 65 billion to energy sector in terms of renewable energy and clean energy technology. So there are initiatives in this area in terms of accessing, mobilizing resources, and I think as a country, we should be proud. We have done significantly well in terms of addressing this issue, and even when we were in COP26 in Glasgow last time, I think Kenya was given a really a great applaud. I think the PS is here. He could talk about it because he was there. And I think National Treasury has done the best it could in terms of providing finances on disaster issues and climate finance issues, climate disaster issues. For example, it has been talked about before, even the Kenya Livestock Insurance Program. It's a very important program in terms of financing mechanism for livestock insurance. This and also Kenya Agriculture Insurance Risk Management funding, and this all through resource mobilized through the National Treasury, and we are cognizant of the challenges that this will pose even for the economic growth of our country. So including even the Hunger Safety Net, which is a cash transfer program. All these are funding programs that require funding, and National Treasury is at the center of it in terms of looking for resources to ensure that we fund this critical mass of our society. In addition to this climate issue, of course, with climate issue comes disaster. A lot of disasters like floods and other unexpected disasters. In this regard, the government mobilized about 20 billion Kenya shilling through a facility with the World Bank called CAT-DDO, Disaster Deferred Drawdown Option for Disaster, Catastrophe Deferred Drawdown Option. And in this regard, through this reform agenda, the National Treasury has been championing in terms of disaster management and also addressing the disaster itself. In this regard, the reform agenda, we have managed to deal with the issue of disaster risk management bill, policy, and bill. This bill is currently in the National Assembly. The policy has been completed. And also through this reform agenda, we were able to support the counties in terms of developing multi-level hazard risk profiling, and also county emergency operation plan, a national emergency response plan. All these reforms are through this disaster reform agenda of the government, and we have been able to do a lot in this area. And actually, recently, the National Assembly has also passed a bill to set up National Emergency Drought Fund, which there's a proposal to put up 2 billion in National Emergency Drought Fund in terms of dealing with emergencies in this area. So I'll say in summary, there are a lot that has been done, not only on climate change issues, but also in terms of addressing disaster related to climate. And for us from National Treasury, we want, we are very much aware of these challenges, and also the funding, of course, is always competing priorities. But we do the best we can in terms of ensuring that we pursue the economic path that we want to pursue in terms of low carbon, green development path, and environmental friendly in that regard, and to ensure that we sustain lives and livelihood, and ensure that we'll have sustainable development now and in the future, so that we develop necessary policies and legislation, and also ensure that we source the resources required to deal with climate issues. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Dulacha, for your feedback. I must say that has been very comprehensive, and indeed a confirmation that the Kenya government has access to Green Climate Fund, and it has utilized these resources to support various programs both at the county level and the national government level. And beyond that, thanks for confirming that beyond the Green Climate Fund, the central government has also been able to develop other funds with other donors to support other programs that are related to disaster management and relief in that area. Thank you very much for that. My next question would go to Dr. Fadel Ndiame, the Deputy President of AGRA. As we have seen even from the previous presentations on disasters out of climate change, the impact of that has been great, especially to the common people. And when we mention the common people, we cannot forget the farmers who are involved in production of food as a resource. With the climate change being a global issue, has there been any change in the design of the programs of AGRA? And what are the impacts of these programs to farmers, not just in Kenya, but also in the continent? Ndiame, for your response.
I'm from UNCDF.
Oh, sorry, so Ndiame is not here. Okay, sorry, we'll save that question for one of the panelists who is not here. Apologies for that. And for the panelist, Dr. Dimitri Pozidiev, UNCDF Global Advisor on Local Transformative Finance. My question to you as a member of the panelists is, in light of what is happening in terms of the global climate change and the activities of UNCDF, what are some of the transformative initiatives in financing climate action that the UNCDF is carrying out at the moment? Thank you.
Distinguished guests, distinguished delegates, allow me to skip the protocol in the interest of time. Good morning. Thank you for the question, and I would like to deliberate a little bit before answering your question, to deliberate a little bit on the themes that have been discussed by my fellow panelists as well as during yesterday's session. As you remember, we heard a very strong statement from the former Prime Minister that counties need to be adequately and timely financed for climate action. And this is, of course, very true. However, the discussion here has mostly focused on external finance. Finance coming either from the national treasury or from development partners. And I would both agree and disagree with the PS at the Ministry of Devolution in terms of funds availability. Well, the money is there in a way, but it's not quite there in two respects. One is, as you know, of course, we have not been able to set up the compensation fund in Glasgow that would compensate the developing countries for the negative climate change produced by the developed countries. We will not name those countries, we all know them. But second is the type of finance. Not all of it is available in grants. An increasing amount of that finance comes as concessional funding, either in loans or in guarantees. And this creates the bottleneck not on the supply side, but actually on the demand side. There are simply not enough investable projects that could qualify for this type of finance. I'm not even asking the financial institutions present here, but you may want to address it in your comments. Do you, as a financial institution, consider green projects as an asset class? Do you invest in such projects? If not, why? Where is the bottleneck? So it is extremely important, and my colleagues here, both the Honorable Senator and the representative of the Treasury, mentioned the issue of own source revenues, which is a critical issue, because without healthy finances, there can be no sustainable climate finance at the county level. And let me, well, of course you have heard the dictum that money begets money. It is usually used in the negative sense, but there is a shining linen to that as well. And let me demonstrate that with an example. And for that, let me leap from here to Morocco, of all places. On Tuesday, I will sit on the investment committee, on the UNCDF investment committee, that will discuss the request from the city of Shefcheshwan for a loan, and it's a highly concessional loan, of 400,000 USD for their 1.4 million project for public lighting system. In total, the municipality itself, and by the way, it's not a very big municipality, it's about 42,000 inhabitants, so it is comparable. So the municipality will invest 400,000 in own source revenues, in retained earnings, so to say, and the rest will come, it is a syndicated finance scheme, so the rest will come from UNCDF and from some other financiers. But look at the economics and financials of this project. By investing into the public lighting scheme, which is solar, the municipality will save 331,000 USD annually. In other terms, the payback period for this investment for the municipality is just 1.3 years when the municipality will break even. But for this, you would need to invest 400,000. So what is the situation in Kenya at the moment, looking at the county own source revenues? I believe you have mentioned the figure. I mean, the ratio of own source revenues to gross county product. It is 0.5. 0.5%, decreasing from 0.7% back in 2013. So it is a decreasing trend. We will not go into the details because it might have various interpretations. But one way or another, the current share of own source revenues in the total annual budget at the county level is from 9 to 12%. In other words, about 10% comes from the national treasury, one way or another. Of course, the types of the grants and the transfers are different, and you all know it. But it's not even that. It is the revenue gap against the potential that really matters. There is a very good analysis and publication, quite recent, by the Commission on Revenue Allocation. And here are the figures. So 17 counties collect below 20% of their potential. It means that they can increase their revenues 5-fold. 24 counties collect below 40% of their revenue potential. A potential 2.5 increase. And then there are just 4 counties that collect over 50% of their potential. What we as UNCDF are doing to try to address this situation? Together with the International Monetary Fund, and I would like to recognize our colleagues from the TADAT Secretariat of the International Monetary Fund and the African Tax Administration Forum, ATAF, who worked on this. We conducted tax administration diagnostic in 8 counties, and we are planning to conduct it in another 8 starting early next year to identify the strengths and weaknesses of tax administration systems at the county level and suggests the ways how it can be improved. By the way, Mombasa was one of the counties that underwent this diagnostic, and I will be happy to share with you the results. They're not particularly impressive, I should admit. But In none of the, this is not a criticism of Mombasa County, because none of the counties has demonstrated particularly impressive results here. So, based on this data diagnostic, and together with the partners, we are combining it with the economic analysis to refine the revenue potential or revenue gap in the counties where this diagnostic has been performed. And from there, we will move to what we call REAP, the Revenue Enhancement Action Plan at the county level that will help transform and unpack the findings of the diagnostic into very specific actions against annual targets in revenue enhancement. And we will work with the counties to help them design those action plans, as well as to implement, including potentially a matching grant to enable certain actions under this initiative. In parallel, together with the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, we are starting the Infrastructure Asset Management Initiative in a number of counties to complement the Revenue Enhancement Action Initiative. In the beginning of this year, we published a handbook on local revenue, on local asset management. It is publicly available, and a number of Kenyan colleagues from counties participated in the workshops that we had, global workshops that we had at the beginning of this year. The objective of this initiative is to set up asset management systems based on the asset lifecycle management, starting from identification and registration and going all the way to operation and management and disposal. Again, combining it with very specific action planning to improve the situation and to increase the revenues from the assets at the disposal of the counties. And lastly, my colleague from UNDP, Walid Badawi, mentioned this. There is a new initiative that we are launching together with UNDP, UN Environment Program, and FAO, and this was announced in Glasgow, by the way. And this is a tree-growing sustainable finance initiative, which will also involve a tree-growing trust fund. One idea is to connect counties to this new fund for them to be able to use PPP arrangements and to unlock the local capital and local businesses to be able to contribute to sustainable forest management. So this is, in a nutshell, the scope of what we are doing and from where we are approaching our interventions and support.
Thank you very much, Dimitri, for that incisive advice on the various initiatives that are being done by UNCDF. Just to recap a few, provision of technical assistance in terms of tax administration to the counties, reviewing and defining revenue gaps and also the potentials that do exist in the counties, and helping counties in infrastructure asset management initiatives. And beyond that, the advice on the tree growing trust fund, and also linking the counties to be able to access these funds for their own climate action initiatives. Thank you very much for that. Looking at my watch, we have a few minutes that we can look at in terms of addressing a number of burning questions from the plenary. And at this moment, I would like to dedicate this time for the plenary sessions, where we will entertain some questions from the plenary to any of the panelists that we have today. It's unfortunate we didn't have the panelist from Agra, but I believe out of this session, when you go out for your tea or so, you will have an opportunity to speak to the Agri team. But having said that, I would like the facilitators to provide some mics for any member of the panel of the team who would have a question. 3 mics would be able to help us in this. So if you have any question to any of the panel members, we would appreciate if you can raise your hand so that we can address the question. I can see a hand at the back there. So another hand there. We will take a number of questions. We will allow 5 so that then we can ask the panelists to respond to them. So we'll have the first go on that side.
Oh, yes. Still Mr. Kideka from the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. My question goes to PS Devolution. He has given us some very good data on the counties. And as we continue, I want to thank my governor, Governor Mutua. He has really done a good job. And I think that is a good example to the rest. He has given us some data on how some counties have done the policy, 35 out of 47, 23 action plan, 29 their funds, and even 7 out of 47 regulations. But I have a question to him. In Kenya, we have a tendency of having very good development plans. We prepare very good manifestos, plans, and all these kind of things, but we never follow up the action on the ground. I'm asking the PS, what action is he taking as a Ministry of Devolution to ensure that we do not have paper plans, that we have action in the ground? Some counties, actually we had cases of people who have very good saying that they have done this, but they have not done. Trees have been planted, no trees, money has been embezzled. And we need to have an action plan so that at the end of some financial year or some plan, we can have, for example, a certain county has planted these trees, a certain area has done this, because we had cases of this country where we have even some dams which have been on paper, Kamoro and the others, Haro, that they have been done on paper, but on the ground there is nothing. So actually, PS, is it possible for your ministry to have an action plan for whatever is being done, so that we can have people who are supervising, taking action plans from every time, 6 months, maybe 1 year, so that we can know, at least at the end of the day, when next time we'll be meeting, we can now have a situation where we are saying this county has planted these trees, this county has done that, and we can even go to the ground and see what is happening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We take your question. We take your question. Next, at the front here.
Thank you. Kipkurichi Pkonyi is my name. The Secretary General County Assembly is from. My question goes to the representative of the PS from Treasury. I want to challenge him for full disclosure on the contents of the funds that he mentioned. Interestingly, he mentioned about 4 funds that exist and in billions. One, disclosed to this conference, the money that has then been dispersed to the counties, because I liked what the Representative Shok said about the effectiveness of implementation of these funds or utilization of the funds in the counties beside their own resource revenue and dependence on the national treasury. Now, the amounts of money that he mentions are too huge that I'm sure if those monies could be traced and be utilized effectively, then the challenges that we are seeing on climate fund or on a climate action would be limited. So full disclosure so that we know the amounts that have gone to the counties, or we are talking about funds that exist at the national, and as well also the streamlining of the same for to the devolved units, because we are here as devolution stakeholders, and these are the monies in the county assemblies, do they come to the counties as from donor groups or donor community? Are they aligned within our budgets? And because the factors that are considered by CRA, I have never seen that component. So it would be interesting that we get full disclosure. I thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. At the back there, the third question.
Thank you very much. My name is Ambassador James Ochami from Kakamega County. Listen to the panelists, and they have actually explained properly. And I have one area that I think and you have rightly put it, all panelists have rightly put it, that not all counties are at the same level. And there's need for us to have adequate capacity and appropriate capacity. My question is, how do you intend to work with COG as a focal point for counties to hasten capacity building? Because for me, financing for climate action at subnational level is a matter of urgency. And if we do not hasten the capacity building, then we will find ourselves repeating what we're actually saying in 2 years' time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ambassador James. Distribute these questions effectively. We've questions from the other gender. So the lady in the middle, just to balance the gender.
Thank you. I hope I will balance the gender and make my point. Okay. My name is Frida Githuku. I am the director of Roots Kenya, a civil society organization. And my question is to the PES. The climate change is not a new phenomenon, and civil society organizations have been advocating for climate change policies and act for more than a decade, for a long time, with minimal success. But we have seen that counties now have rushed to put in policies and act, especially after the announcement of the Green Climate Fund, the African Climate Fund, and of course now FLOCA. And money and resources is a good incentive for action, but it's also a risky incentive. So my question to you is, how will you put, what safeguards will you put to make sure that these resources that are supposed to come to the counties and of course to the grassroots are used solely for climate action, having in mind that also as a country, we are not operating in a very strong financial governance system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frida. So we'll have the last question at the end before we take response from the panelists.
Thank you, Bwana Moderator, Excellencies, the governors, deputy governors, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sylvans Nono of Cooperative Bank, head of public sector banking. I have reactions to the National Treasury, Prof, and also to the comments by Dimitri. And for National Treasury, I wish to confirm, because sometimes it's also good also to confirm some of the statements being made and affirm them, that as Cooperative Bank, we are one of the banks or institutions that they have supported in the process of accreditation. We got the letter of no objection, and are currently working on the application that GCF has already supported us also with the processes and the application protocols. So that is ongoing. For Dimitri, Bwana Moderator, he actually challenged the financial institutions here through you. And the challenge I picked was, as financial institutions, what role are we playing also in the financing of the climate change in our environment initiatives? And I wish to confirm that that is being done. However, a lot needs still to be done. As Cooperative Bank, we are funding a lot of renewable energy programs, but basically in the private sector for hydro projects, solar power, And one of the ways we have also trying to support is to de-risk that area and some of this project to make them bankable. Partnerships, I think somebody talked about the 5 Ps, and one of them was about partnerships, partnering with people like the AGF, the African Guarantee Fund, to de-risk some of those areas and make them bankable for us. The challenge may be to us and through Devolution and also National Treasury. How then do we come up with many more initiatives that make those projects bankable using FLOCA and other initiatives, one. Number two, in terms of coordinated programs, you may be aware, PS, that through the Ministry of Environment, KEFRI is actually currently, as we speak, running another conference on commercial tree farming. How do we coordinate these government programs in such a way that they are aligned and makes it also possible for financial institutions to play their role? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sylvan Snono from Cooperative Bank. And at this stage, I would like now to invite the members of the panelists to look at the questions that have been raised. I would confirm now we have 4 questions because Sylvan Snono was more of a comment than a question. And therefore, looking at the 4 questions that we have, 2 are directly to PS Julius Corey, and the first one, I would give you an opportunity to respond.
Thank you. I think I'll start with a question from, I think, Ideka from Machakos. And I think his question was, we've got so many very good policies, action plans, strategies, but at times there is very little on the ground. And I think I don't have a quick fix to that. But as a Ministry of Devolution, and I believe if you look at the way the Constitution was crafted, was to ensure that government gives full disclosure and involves its citizens in the design and the implementation of the program. So on the basis of that, the ministry has been developing and supporting county governments on ensuring that there is meaningful public participation, and also ensuring that governments have a system in place for public disclosure, so that when there are programs going on, they disclose so that the monitoring also can be done by the citizens themselves. Because when you hear of a dam, it's going to benefit the citizen, not the government. And so when the government discloses, it is the people to make sure that they follow it up. The other thing also is that to promote performance and delivery of these action plans that you've mentioned, that are many, Treasury and ourselves, and together with the support from development partners, we've started what we're calling performance for results. We work with the county governments to engage the citizens to identify their priorities. Once those priorities have been identified and committed to, they are costed, and then when there are funds especially, and I'll talk on the basis of Kenya Devolution Support Program, which has been helping county governments put up infrastructure, put up systems to enable them deliver the services. Once that has been agreed, the county government will be allocated resources and then monitored through our systems. And once they deliver, in the next cycle, they are eligible for better resourcing, so that we encourage those who are performing and delivering to even access more resources so that they can help their citizens. So this strategy of performance for results is what we are advocating for, so that we don't just allocate money for the basis of it, but we allocate to somebody who is doing better. Because we have a case in a project that we have. Counties were given equal money, but after the first year, a good number of counties now tripled their ability to access the money. Others are yet to be able to access. And so we've seen performance for results work, and with that, the citizens will be able to attest to some of these things. And so what I'm urging us all is that as citizens also, we have a responsibility. When we hear an announcement and we don't see movement on the ground, we have structures, we have systems. You have your MCA, you have local leadership who can reach to the administration, ward representatives whom you can approach and say, we heard this, we are not seeing any action. And that way, it drives and pushes accountability on all of us. On issue, I think there was a question on building capacity for financing climate action. FLOCA has taken that into consideration. There is an equitable allocation that has been given to all county governments, and that will help them in building the capacity. I can't remember the exact amounts. I think it's 15 million or 150, one of the two, either 15 or 150, which will go towards building the capacity of county governments so as to be able to now access financing for climate action. So what I would want to urge is that when each one of us, each county receives its equitable allocation for capacity building, let's put it into good use. We will work together as Ministry of Devolution, together with the Ministry of Environment, to ensure that that capacity building is done well. I think there was a question also from
Yes, there is a question from Frida Githuku, which again was for you, and her question was in regard to what are the safeguards that we're putting in place to ensure that the funds that are available to the ministry for various purposes of on climate action are actually being used for the intended purposes at the county level.
Okay. I think the safeguards, which I would say, like especially for FLOCA, is the equitable distribution will be allocated to specific sets of activities that will be implemented with close monitoring together with ourselves, Treasury, and Ministry of Environment. When that has happened, because it is equitable, then what will happen is that what determines further access now to financing financing for climate action activities will depend on the effectiveness of the first capacity building programs. So safeguards have been put in place, and what we would want now is that as we roll out the program, we'll also increase the awareness creation so that together with ourselves and also the citizens will be able to push for that delivery. I think for now, the financing document is very clear on the safeguards, and whoever would want to, then we can sit together and take them through the safeguards that have been put in place.
Yeah, thank you very much, PS, for those responses on the first question, and of course the issue of performance for results.
Okay, the last person talked about coordination of climate action initiatives in government. I think this is still a challenge, but I think when it comes to interface between the national government and the county governments, then the Ministry for Devolution is responsible for that. And that is why when FLOCA came in under the KDSP and this other one, we are coordinating so that the report that I've made is because of that coordinated effort, where we are now working very closely, bringing all other stakeholders and actors so that they can now access the counties in a very coordinated manner. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for those concise responses. I believe if you have any further questions in this regard, you have a chance to engage the PS separately outside this session. But let's respond to the question number 2 that we got, and this was from Mr. Kipkurui, and this was basically for Professor Dulacha, Treasury. And this was in regard to being open in terms of the funds, the various funds that you mentioned that are available for climate action. Are these funds sitting at the National Treasury, or have they been devolved into to the county governments? So that's for your question.
Thank you. in terms of the funds which I mentioned, I think I did mention very clearly that these are projects, and these projects could be in any county. So, but the emphasis of Chepkonyi, I think it was a little bit emotional on this in terms of transparency and accountability. And I think it's very important for us to be accountable and transparent. And if you want the records, I think they are there. And in any case, the budget making process and even allocation of resources is very transparent in that Treasury only makes a proposal to the National Assembly, and it's the National Assembly that approves the budget. So this funding are in public domain. It's not something hidden. And I want to reiterate what the PS has said, that the government is very transparent in terms of resource allocated. And for FLOCA, for example, we even developed a coding, tracking, and monitoring codes within the budget framework, such that you can trace these funds to where they have actually been spent through the system. So there's very good accountability mechanism that is inbuilt in terms of ensuring that these funds are used for the purpose they were intended. And I think it also answers the question asked by one of the people in the forum, I think Frida. There was a second question from Cooperative Bank person I think I want to answer. The question was about accreditation. Before I answer that, just to go back to the question he asked again, the issue of funding, as I said, dates back to 1990s when the Global Environmental Facility was set up. The issue of funding has been there. So it's not something that has started now or when the counties came into place. So if we talk of transparency and accountability, it will be of all those funds dating back to 1990. And for now, I think the world has recognized that indeed climate is a serious issue and it requires funding. That's why the Green Climate Fund was set up in 2010 as a financing mechanism by the UN, United Nations Framework or Convention on Climate Change. So it's basically, it is a relation that climate is actually a serious matter. And in the last meeting in COP26, there was commitment by the developed countries to the developing countries to raise $100 billion US dollars towards climate funding, climate change issues. And this commitment was there even in Paris Agreement in 2015, but was never honored until even in last meeting it came up. There was also a discussion about loss and damage caused by climate issues, climate problems that arise out of climate degradation. And this also has been a discussion at COP26, but has not progressed because there was no funding put for loss and damage caused by climate issues. I think these are matters that we need to know at global level so that this is a serious matter. But I think the issue of accountability is important to all of us. Just as Chepkonyi has raised, I think we are very cognizant of that. On Cooperative Bank, I think the issue of accreditation is a tedious process. It is actually very involving, and GCF also is very slow. They require so much of documents, and it takes time to get accredited. We are lucky that NEMA is accredited, and so is KCB, and I believe even Cooperative will be accredited in the course of time. We want to encourage more of our institutions to get accreditation so that they are able to access these global funds. Once you are accredited institution, then you can put up the proposals, and once the Treasury gives a no objection letter, then the institution will be able to access these funds. And for Cooperative, I think that process is still on, and we hope we'll succeed. And to the credit of Central Bank of Kenya, I think for the first time, the regulator also have taken note of the climate issue. Recently, Central Bank issued climate risk management guidelines for banks, which is a good thing because it's an recognition that these are financial institutions and climate is a serious matter in financial, whether it's borrowing or lending. So I think there are very positive developments. The issue of coordination, I think the PS has mentioned, is very important for us as a government to coordinate these activities. And the issue of climate change is cross-cutting across sectors. It's not limited to one sector. Neither is it restricted to one county. It's across the entire country. And counties will play a big role because every one of us live in a county. And I think the epicenter of climate action will be the counties itself because these climate issues actually arise in one county or another. So at the end of the day, the resources will eventually get to the county, whether it is through projects by national government or actually direct allocation to the counties to mitigate and adapt to the climate issues, it will still be a county issue. I believe, and for us, coordination at both levels of government and across our sectors in the economy, it's very critical that we are coordinated. I think that is a very fundamental and critical for us all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Dulacha. As we look up to wind the session, I know the two gentlemen have given us all the responses, but we have two other panelists whom I would like to request them to give us their final word or any response on the issues that have been raised, starting with Dimitri.
Thank you so much to Cooperative Bank for explaining what you are doing. I recognize the issue of the lack of investable projects, and this is what I mentioned, the bottleneck on the supply side. But it's not only, the point that I tried to make was that this lack of investable projects is not only on the private sector side, but equally on the public sector side. Because as we have discussed, there may be quite economical and financially viable green projects that create streams of revenues and therefore may be financed on certain conditions. And close to this comes the question of the technical capacity and capacity building for counties to be able to deal with climate finance issues. It's not just getting money from the Treasury and then spending the money. Public money should be spent in a smart way to leverage additional external capital, both private capital and capital from the from development partners. But this is again impossible without a sustainable financial position at the county level, including own source revenue generation.
Thank you very much, Dimitri. Senator Faki, your final words.
Thank you. Maybe just two issues. Number one, the issue of strong accountability mechanisms. I think the accountability begins with the people. From the CIDP, from the annual plans, that's where you have to inculcate the accountability mechanism so that by the time the funds are coming in, the public that is supposed to benefit from those projects are able to know how much is coming in and how that fund is going to be used. We have seen situations where money has come in, but if you look at on the ground, the projects that were intended to be utilized for have not been implemented. And finally, I know there are many conditions that are placed on these donor funds, but it's also time because of the urgency of the situation. They relax some of these conditionalities so that the funds are easily accessible to the counties and so that they're able to implement the projects that they intend to implement to alleviate this climate suffering. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator Faki, for those last comments. Plenary, we've come to the close of the session on challenges on financing climate action at the county levels. And presentations have been done, the questions have been responded to. At this moment, we would wish to thank the panelists for their valuable contributions. Can we appreciate them with a round of applause? Thank you very much. We appreciate you as you leave the podium. And thank you very much for hearing us out. And I believe this will contribute a lot in terms of what we will do as counties in the effort to encourage climate action in our own jurisdictions. Thank you very much. I'll take the floor back to the overall moderator.
We hereby announce the arrival of our chief guest today. Let's be upstanding to welcome Honorable Lady Justice Martha Koome. The first female Chief Justice of Kenya. Thank you. We may be seated. The chief guest, Your Excellency, governors who are present, deputy governors, honorable senators, members of the National Assembly, members of the County Assembly, heads of missions who are here, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. We are in day 2 of our conference, and we are happy that we are joined today by our chief guest, Honorable Lady Martha Koome, the first female Chief Justice of Kenya. Let's put our hands together for our chief guests. So just taking cue from where we have left, we've been talking about financing climate actions. We've had conversations on this issue since yesterday, and we have noted that climate change is a reality in Kenya. Kenya's climate is fast changing. Kenyans are feeling the impact of climate change, and we need action for the future development if we are to meet our agenda in Vision 2030. Chief guests, honorable members in the House, before I hand over the program to the moderator, allow me to go through one of the achievements that has been realized by the Council of Governors. So the communication team, I hope you're on standby. Allow me to introduce the second guest we have this afternoon. We have Honorable Dr. Miriam Chekukwa, MP, and she is from the Republic of Zimbabwe. She is Harare Proportional Representative who has joined us this afternoon. Madam, feel welcome. She is from the Parliament of Zimbabwe. So the Council of Governors has had achievements, and one of the achievements is a compendium of county innovations and best practices that they have documented on COVID-19 response. We have the compendium here with us, and we'll be releasing it out to the members of public. And this has been done by the COG through the Maharifa Center, and it demonstrates what tangible results we have from the Council of Governors. We are here, of course, to learn, to innovate, to take stock of what we have done. And therefore, I want to invite us to have a short preview of what is contained in this compendium. The communication team. Okay, so this is the compendium, and a little summary about what is in. We have 13 counties that demonstrated how innovative ideas can give us positive results. The cases documented here vary. For example, under the sector of health, the Machakos County converted a stadium to make a makeshift hospital in response to COVID-19 in April 2020. In Kericho County, the mitigation included using radiology to test COVID-19 and initiate treatment on time, and this was in April 2021. We also had a response, a case study of the GK prison in Migori County, where successful interventions were done. In the sector and planning sector, Nyeri County had a delivery tool for the county's development agenda and comprehensive response to COVID-19. And this was in June 2021. On matters gender, counties did quite a lot of interventions. We had Mombasa County with a toll-free line that helped the county to report on cases of gender-based violence. We also had targeted gender-based violence interventions to address rising cases in Makueni County. We also had the launch of the Gender-Based Recovery Center in Kwale County. Kilifi County also mitigated the high prevalence of teenage pregnancy to keep the young girls in school, and this was in May 2021. The other achievements and innovations were seen in the education sector, with Kitui County launching the distribution of free face masks for all learners ahead of school reopening in January 2021. In communication, the Kisumu County COVID-19 Response Call Center provided timely and critical information, referral, and linkages at the peak of the emergency, June 2021. In Lamu County, they used a town crier to sensitize locals on the COVID-19 pandemic, and that was in March 2021. And finally, in the sector of information and technology, Kajiado County embraced private sector partnership and had an innovation they duped Riziki to scale up digital food distribution to vulnerable groups. That was in June 2020. Your Excellencies, the Honorable Chief Guest, ladies and gentlemen, that is the compendium, and a copy will be availed after this. Please ensure that you get yourself a copy to get to learn more about the innovative stories that we have. It's now my single pleasure to invite